Brew Strong is brought to you by Blickman Engineering, home of the top-tier brewing stand. Visit them online at blickmanengineering.com.
It's time for the beer radio you've been looking for. This is the show that dispels myths, tackles the toughest topics, and makes no apologies for geeking out on beer. Hosted by two guys that drink before they think. Jamil Zainasheff and John Palmer. This is Brew Strong.
Hey, howdy, hey, my brewing brothers and sisters.
Greetings.
Somebody wanted you to say, what was it?
What's up?
No, they wanted you to say something, bitches.
Oh, yeah, what up, bitches?
What up, bitches?
It's not me.
That's not a Palmerism. Yeah, it just wouldn't work.
Yeah. And even was up, I mean, that brings, bad beer to mind. So.
Yeah, it's a little too, 80s, 90s? I don't remember when that was. I'm so old, I go all the way back to the 60s. That's a long time ago.
I was just remarking to myself this morning that Rush is my favorite band of all time. 30 years, still going strong.
Wow. Yeah, and it's not quite 30 years, but we're still going strong. We're even got our new sponsor, Blickman Engineering. They manufacturers of some very high quality and very high
tech.
High tech, yeah. I was going to say high clever.
Yeah, that's a good way.
Pieces of engineering, rethinking the way things are. I've been exchanging quite a bit of email with John Blickman, recently, and he's been telling me about a lot of the new things that they're working on, and it's really cool. He's always, they're looking at things differently. They're trying to understand, the physics of what they're trying to accomplish and why, previous solutions for something doesn't work, and then come up with a new solution. So I think that's really cool. And,
I like the way he thinks, because it's kind of like how I do. I mean, when you're trying to design a new mash tun from a cooler or something, and you read about guys saying, "Well, I just grabbed this piece of braid that I pulled off the water heater and a little silicone glue and some epoxy here, and I found a fitting laying on the floor, and I whipped that together, and it works great. I got this great efficiency." And it's like, yeah, that's good. Good on you, mate. But to me, I like a solution to be elegant as well. I want something that comes together elegantly, and I think that's what John does too with his products.
Yeah, I think things are designed from the ground up to solve a problem when they do them. So I think that's pretty cool. And good on you, mate. I tell you, it's Australia Day coming up, January 26th. That's like I guess it's controversial in a way, because it's like the day that the British sailed into the harbor and laid claim and to Australia. Yeah, and so indigenous peoples, I guess there's that whole thing. But regardless, if our friends down in Australia are celebrating the long weekend, hopefully they're up. It's probably 1 a.m. there now.
Yeah, but it's also probably pretty hot there too, relatively. I mean, middle of summer, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I imagine in North Queensland they're going through the wet right now.
Yeah, well, and you've been having some big rain down where you're at.
Yeah, a full week of it. I mean, every day it rained hard. I couldn't believe it. It's unusual, and streets flooded. And this morning though, it's just gorgeous out. I mean, the sky is so blue, like you don't see it outside of Montana. And there's snow on the mountains behind us. It's really pretty out.
Right. Yeah, I was talking with my nephew-in-law over Christmas. We were down there visiting my sister and her family, and And we were talking barbecues. They moved into this new house, and we're talking about barbecues. And I said, well, it's nice to have a bit of cover over the barbecue, so even when it's raining, you can grill. He goes, no, it doesn't rain down here.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it does.
Once in a while.
Once in a while, you get some frog stranglers down there, huh?
Yeah, that's for sure. It was like Florida one day. I swear, I couldn't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Just heavy like we saw in Orlando a few years back.
Yeah. We were there for the conference, and it was really coming down.
Yeah,
that one in June, they had those summer storms.
Yeah, it's a lot of mudslides up in the hills, but nothing came our way, fortunately, and just have a few branches in the yard and no fallen trees. So we got lucky. I guess down Long Beach they had quite a bit of flooding. Mm-hmm. Because they're so close to sea level there, and the land's really flat, and just the water doesn't drain anywhere.
Yeah. It goes can't go in the ocean if the tide's too high, huh?
Yeah. Here, I mean, it all washes downhill, taking cars and trucks with it, but
when you have those big fires, and that's why you're getting all those mudslides.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Well, and how about those poor people in Haiti, huh? That's some serious tragedy, And I know. Everybody around the world has already heard about that.
Yeah,
hopefully
Red Cross donations and such.
Some donations, yeah.
Because it's amazing to realize, the number of people killed, rivals that tsunami in Indonesia, or India.
They're figuring 200,000 dead.
Wow.
And and it's not just the dead; it's the people who are surviving. They're having a rough time of it. So if you got the wherewithal, I know times are tight for everybody. Hit the Red Cross up with some Haiti money, and do what you can. Definitely would be appreciated, I'm sure, by those on the receiving end.
Yeah. Should we give the people a rundown of what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah. Justin, what's our topic for the day?
Great topic today, one that I've always been interested in as well.
Howdy, Jay-Z. This is Scott from LaGrange, Kentucky. I was hoping that you could help me out by shedding some light into something that usually gets glazed over, the boil. What's going on in my brew pot, and when is it happening? Besides the darkening and evaporating, how does time and temperature, those real violent boils, affect the outcome? Thanks for helping me understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. Cheers. All
right, Scott, that's a good question. I like that question because, we all, myself included, we're like, all right, well, we boil it, and then, it's sanitizing it and concentrating it.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, and maybe the hops, and and then we cool it down. We put it in. Okay, boil done. It's a much more complex topic than that, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, you have your grain bill that defines your flavors of the beer you're making, but to a large extent, a lot of those flavors in the beer are created in the boil from the ingredients. So. Yeah, we can get quite complex in it.
Okay. Well, and before we go much further into the boil itself, why don't we talk really the mechanics or the engineering behind the boil? We got John Blickman on the line. Hey, John, you there?
Howdy ho, neighbors.
Hey, John.
Hey,
thanks for joining us. All right, so now I got two Johns on the line. I'm going to have to call one Rock and one Blickman.
Yeah, almost ties a record for you, doesn't
it? Two Johns at once, yes. All right, so John, explain to us from an engineer's point of view, what's happening in the boiler? How do you get the boil? Or the burners, the heat. Talk to us about that.
Well, obviously, the key thing for me as an engineer is looking at the fuel energy input, which in most cases for home brewers is going to be propane. And how do I get that energy into the pot to do what I want it to do, which is add energy to the liquid that's in it. And there's a lot of information you see on burners, 210,000 BTU burners and 30,000 BTU burners. What they're really talking about is BTUs per hour, or how much energy you're putting in per hour. And I have found on all the work that we did developing the top-tier burners that the published data isn't necessarily correct.
Right.
It's a very easy thing to measure. You simply burn the burner at maximum power for 1 hour, and you weigh the amount of fuel that you burned.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a given amount of energy, about 95,000 BTUs or 22,000 BTUs in a pound of propane. But that's just what you've burned.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how much you've spent on fuel.
Right.
So
not how much heat went into the pot.
Right. So that's when you get into what I call transfer efficiency, or how efficient is your burner then of getting that energy into the pot. Mm-hmm. And that's a fairly easy calculation too. There's so many BTUs. 1 BTU is the energy required to heat 1 pound of water at 1 degree Fahrenheit.
Mm-hmm.
So you basically heat the water from, say, 68 to about 180. I generally don't try to go all the way up to boil because you can get some localized boiling that'll affect your data a little bit. Mm-hmm. But you've got a delta T, and then you've got, knowing the gallons, and 8.34 pounds per gallon. You know how much energy you've put in that pot in a certain amount of time. So then it's a simple calculation. Know how much went into the pot. You know how much fuel energy you put in, and dividing those two, you can get your transfer efficiency. And surprisingly, the most efficient burners are those little teeny Walmart-type turkey burners. But they're extremely low power, and they take forever to heat.
Mm-hmm.
And even those are about 36% efficient. And then you've got some like the real high-powered wok-type burners.
Mm-hmm.
They produce an impressive amount of heat, but they're not very efficient.
Mm-hmm.
So, you'll range from 25 to 36% efficiency.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything a home brewer can do to improve the efficiency of their burner? Let's say I got a burner on a stand of some kind, and I got my pot on top of it, and there's no real, other, wind blockage or something like that. Does putting like aluminum foil around it help, or what can I do to make my system more efficient?
Yeah, putting a shield around to block the wind from the flame, which is going to cause flame instability, and you lose a lot of energy. But a lot of that is just energy that's just getting directed to the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
So if you put some kind of shield around your burner, so it's just not an open flame at the bottom of it, that's going to improve your transfer efficiency quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what about pot size to burner diameter? Is there anything? I would imagine the wider my burner diameter, and the small to the ratio of my pot diameter. A small pot on a wide burner, it's not gonna be as efficient. I'm gonna get more heat up the sides, or is that
that's
incorrect?
Absolutely correct.
Okay.
Or if you've got a pot that's real short. I mean, there's kind of a trade-off. If you have a pot that's real, squatty, real short and wide, you have a lot more surface area, so you lose a lot of heat.
Mm-hmm.
So we designed the Boilermaker pots at a 1.2 aspect ratio, or diameter to height. So they had when they were at the max liquid height, they had a minimum surface area, and that let us heat it a little faster, and then they're also consistent between sizes. So you don't want to go too wide, but you don't want to certainly go too small. You definitely want your burner smaller in diameter than your pot, at least the area that's exposed to the flame.
Mm-hmm. Now,
and never run your flame past the bottom of your pot.
Mm-hmm. Because then you're just blowing heat up the sides, and
yeah, you're just
pretty
wasting it.
Now, what about the pot materials? I know back in the day they would make their copper pots or pots or kettles out of copper is good, easier metal to work with and better heat transfer, but really not that strong and not that easy to clean. And also, they used to make them, I guess, in an onion shape. In order to enhance the motion of the boil. Is there anything to that, or was that just something they thought would work back then?
I really haven't done any work or anything with non-flat bottom pots. Mostly, they're difficult to support and hold and everything else.
Mm-hmm. Not as stable.
Yeah. So really don't have any data there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One thing I would say is, a spherical shape has got the most volume with the least amount of surface area.
Okay,
so
that
heat loss would be minimized with that.
That might have been what they were doing there because all that was coal fired and pretty hard to heat something with to boiling with that kind of setup. So that might have been a big part of it.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of the steam-jacketed boil kettles that they have in professional breweries are kind of spherical on the bottom for that reason.
Yes, and then also the liquefied steam then collects at the bottom.
Yeah.
So you can drain it back out to recirculate.
Oh, yes. If it was flat, you'd have a hard time draining it. So if you have the low point in the kettle, then it all just drains right back out through there.
Right.
See, you get these engineers talking about this stuff, and it all just makes sense all of a sudden. You're like, oh, okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
So we just have a bunch of jargon to make it sound like we know what we're talking about.
You mentioned the conductivity of metals. Copper is the best. I'm going strictly off memory. I don't have any numbers in front of me, but I believe copper is twice as effective as aluminum in terms of conductivity.
Mm-hmm.
But that's about five times greater than stainless steel.
Mm-hmm.
But what you'll run into is the thickness also plays a direct role. And so if you have a thin wall, you get better heat transfer across the thin wall than you do a thick wall. And that's where cookware these days, they'll include a copper layer or an aluminum layer on the bottom of a pot.
Mm-hmm.
To enhance the heat transfer and spread out the heat through a thin stainless. But then the thin stainless wall allows quick transfer from the aluminum to the liquid.
Mm-hmm.
So your metals can be manipulated to help your boil that way.
So what's the heat transfer of a lead pot? I bet you a lead pot would work pretty well.
A silver pot, I believe, would be the best. Because I think silver conducts heat even a smidge better than copper.
I could probably,
if I remember.
Probably get one hammered out of gold. How's that? 24-karat pot?
Yeah.
Now that you're a sponsor, John, you're going to have to fund these types of research for me, okay?
And I recently learned titanium is really good too.
What's that?
You could make a titanium pot because titanium's really good.
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah.
Its actual conductivity isn't that great, but I guess it has low heat content, so it doesn't absorb heat; it just conducts it.
Oh, it just passes it right through. It doesn't hold on to any of it.
Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting. Well, and what about those jet burners? They put a lot of heat in one spot on the pot, and my understanding is that you can actually get some sort of scorching through something like that. Is that true?
I personally have not experienced scorching with any of the burners. I think what to me the big difference between the burners that kind of direct the heat in one area, like the wok jet type burners,
mm-hmm.
or the the Walmart type jet burners, just the
single orifice,
the single point units. they tend to just put a tremendous amount of heat in the middle, and they just send a lot of the heat to the outside. They just don't let a nice, even distribution of heat over the whole bottom of the pot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's why we tended towards a little bit different burner for the top tier, which had, you know, over 100 small nozzles that distributed over a greater surface area, and found it a lot more efficient and used less propane.
Mm-hmm. Now, what's the difference between, you know, if I was the heat content of, let's say, propane, energy content of propane versus natural gas, and how do you, you know, can you like report one of those burners to work on natural gas?
Yes, almost all of them you can report a rejet to burn on natural gas. And I think off the top of my head, I think the heat content of gas is about 80% of that of propane. There's just less carbons and more hydrogens. And we just rejetted the top tier burners to run on gas. And you know, one of the key limitations is how much air you can move through your venturi and how much gas you can move through your orifice. Well, that sounded a little...
Yeah, I can move up plenty of gas through my orifice, that's for sure.
Depends on the pressure.
Yeah, ask my wife, and she'll tell you, oh, yeah, I'm very successful at that.
Anyway, that kind of determines how much energy you're going to get out. We ended up about a 15% D rate off of propane, which wasn't too bad.
Right, okay. So
and then typical gas pressure is about 6 inches of water, residential gas pressure. So there's a limit as to how much gas you can move as well.
Okay. Now the other thing I heard about setting up your boil, and I've done this myself, is to set up my burner just slightly off center, and you get kind of more of a rolling action. From one side to the other of the kettle. Is that of any benefit, or or have you heard about that? I know some of the pro brewer equipment, they it's a little off center when they do something like that.
I've never personally tried that. I guess mostly because I've never really had an issue with getting a very vigorous boil. One thing I did do was put a little spreadsheet together, as I was talking with John a little bit before the show, on how much energy. Okay, you want to get your water up to boil, or your wort up to boil as quickly as possible, just to save time. So there's a certain amount of energy that's needed for that. The next step is, how do I get a full rolling boil? And typical evaporation rates that I've used and seen is somewhere between 10 and 15% of your starting boil over a period of an hour or an hour and a half. And so then there's going to be a lower amount required to do that, because there's so much energy required to vaporize 1 pound of water, or 1 gallon of water. So we actually had a little spreadsheet. It takes about half, maybe a third of the burner energy to maintain a good solid boil. I actually did some quick calculations. It was pretty straightforward to figure that out, on how much you would need to just evaporate that amount. And I find if you're evaporating that amount, that kind of drives a nice, heavy, rolling boil.
Very interesting. All right. Well, Palmer, you got any more questions for Mr. Blickman while we got him on the line?
Well, I was just racking my brain trying to think of some good ones. One comment that occurred to me while we were talking was, when you brought up the off-center placement of heat to kind of encourage wort movement during the boil. I think that's more relevant to the professional brewing scale, where the boil kettle may be 6 feet deep, and you're trying to move a large volume of liquid. I think even with John's 30-gallon pot, we're only talking maybe 2 feet of depth in a pot. So it's a lot easier to get work turnover in that kind of at that scale than it is at the professional scale. So maybe a couple homebrewers will try setting their heat off the side and see if it changes the results, but I'm feeling it's not a necessity, is what I'm bringing up.
Well, maybe if you have a underpowered burner,
that's true.
and you're having trouble getting a good wort movement in your kettle, you could move the burner off to the side a little bit. I imagine there's diminishing returns if you move that burner too far off to the side. You're going to get what John was saying about heat escaping around the sides of the kettle instead of directly firing the bottom of the kettle. So you don't want to move too far.
Make sure that pot is really well supported too. Right. Don't want boiling wort dumping on the floor on your foot. And that's one thing I like about the top tier burners is it actually has
the burners are well connected.
Well, yeah, and there's retainers on the side to help keep you from sliding the pot off.
Right, I love that. The first time I saw that, I'm like, what a brilliant design, and so simple yet so effective, because you can actually adjust those tabs for any kettle size. You put any kettle size on those things and adjust them so it holds your kettle centered over the burner, so it's not going to fall off one way or the other. You don't have to worry about
earthquakes.
Yeah, exactly. You could brew in Haiti with this thing.
Yeah. That's right.
All right.
One of the main reasons we did that was for kegel users, because that's it's not a flat bottom pot, and if that gets moved over a little too close, that can be a stability issue.
Yeah.
So, and we also made sure to accommodate a pot or a keg on that burner.
Right. Okay. Great information. Thank you very much, John Blickman, for joining us, and thank you again. I know I've told you in private, but haven't had a chance to tell you on the air. Thank you very much for sponsoring the show. It makes
we really appreciate that.
A big difference to us, and you're essentially paying for all these people that listen to the show to listen for free. So I'm sure they appreciate it greatly.
You're certainly welcome. I've been just very thrilled and excited about being the sponsor for the show. The kind of topics you talk about are the kind of things that I think about when I'm designing products. And, I'm just glad when I was talking with John at the 2009 NHC, he walked me over and introduced me to Justin, and I learned more about the Brewers Network, and really was excited to jump on board, and you'll probably see me here for quite a while.
Great.
Cool.
Thanks a bunch.
Well, thanks for joining us.
All right.
Oh, certainly. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll get into what's actually happening to the wort during the boil. Back after this.
Brew right. Brew smart.
Brew strong. This is Brew Strong.
When Blickman Engineering set out to design a great brewing stand, they knew it had to be strong, adaptable, and last for a lifetime. The top-tier brewing stand is now proudly available at BlickmanEngineering.com. It grows with your brewing skills and equipment. Start with 5-gallon coolers on its heavy-gauge stainless steel shelves. Then move all the way up to 30-gallon pots on the high-output burner tiers. Speaking of burners, the custom Blickman Engineering top-tier burners are extremely powerful, efficient, and amazingly quiet. They have safety stops to center your pot, and they'll last a lifetime and won't rust. The top-tier brewing stand allows virtually infinite combinations from traditional gravity systems to 2 tiers to completely horizontal. Configure your stand the way you want and have the freedom to change it at any time in the future. Your brewing stand should adapt with you, not force you to learn a new process. Visit BlickmanEngineering.com today to configure your top-tier brewing stand and to find a local Blickman retailer. You'll be surprised with all the flexible features and the competitive price. Start brewing with Blickman from the top tier.
Downtown Joe's, located in the historic Oberon building in beautiful downtown Napa, California, offers an award-winning brew pub experience from 8:30 a.m. to 1 a.m. every day. For 15 years at the corner of 2nd and Main, Downtown Joe's has been voted Best Night Spot 7 times and Best Brew Pub for the last 4 years in a row. Brewmaster Colin Kaminsky's handcrafted ales, like his Tail Wagon Amber Ale and Catherine the Great Imperial Stout, are the perfect accent to riverside dining, live music, and a relaxing outdoor patio. Don't miss the Beer of the Month, special rotating taps, and happy hour all day Mondays. Visit downtownjoes.com to make reservations, peruse their extensive calendar of events, or just read more about their fantastic beers. Come enjoy the fine beer, food, and music. Downtown Joe's, the award-winning brew pub where you'll feel at home.
Where were we? You stole an oak barrel from the mist of Ravenwood, and Lord Zinfandel the Avenger is in pursuit. Do you drop the barrel and run?
Hell no.
We need it for a Flinders Red.
I'm gonna cast Pediococcus damnithus on the barrel.
Sorry, your ghosts are imprisoned in his winery forever.
Ugh, I hate it when Greg's the brewmaster.
This sucks.
What do we have here? Orville Rodenbach?
Buzz off, guy. We got a brew session going.
Is that an actual beer?
Yeah, I crafted it. I don't really use the dice anymore. I'm a 10th level beer nerd.
Are you a 10th level beer nerd? Do you get a long-lasting foam stand when you think about wheat malt? Then you're in good company at Northern Brewer. Northern Brewer has all your beer nerd needs, ingredients, equipment, and knowledge at northernbrewer.com. Plus, fast, cheap shipping, only $7.99 for the contiguous USA. And check out Northern Brewer's huge selection of dorky beer kits, including the pre-prohibition lager.
Perfect for steampunk.
And the single hop best bitter.
Now on cask and 10 forward.
Make 10th level at northernbrewer.com.
What's going on, man? Oh my God, it was the best time. We hit like more than 30 breweries and totally the best of the best, you know. 21st Amendment, Russian River, Firestone, the brewery dudes, Lagunitas, friggin' Triple Rock, the Double Daddy guys, Speakeasy, Linden, and Firehouse, Gordon Bees, Drake's, dude, on and on. Ale Industries, Moonlight. It was totally awesome, and it was the first annual. You know, I got to be at the birth, the inception. You only get one first time, baby. What's that? Oh, it was the Brewing Network's first annual Winter Brews Festival.
I just sat down and went, what do we want? And that's how we tried to plan this.
Live music, great food. Oh man, it was Saturday, January 30th. You really should have gone. Check out thebrewingnetwork.com on tap to see what you missed. Or did you?
The first annual Brewing Network Winter Brews Festival is coming up January 30th. Don't miss it.
In the past year, the Brewing Network has been able to add 2 new shows, expand our studio capabilities and quality, and bring more beer information home to you than ever before. In no small part, this is due to subscribers like you. Thank you from all of us at the Brewing Network. Without your monthly support of any denomination, we could not bring you the very best in live beer radio like Can You Brew It, Brew Strong, and the Sunday Session. Haven't signed up yet? Join your fellow brewers in the BN Army. Sign up today at thebrewingnetwork.com for a recurring donation as little as $2 a month. Besides all the great live radio you'll support, every subscriber is automatically entered in monthly raffles for amazing brew gear like a conical fermenter, a temperature control system, or your own draft setup. Become a part of the BN Army today.
Hilo, what's it feel like?
Take awesome and multiply it by 2.
Yeah! Spraying live beer radio all over your face.
Can't get any better than this, baby.
It's the Brewing Network.
Back to the 2 guys that know how to turn beer into beer. This is Brew Strong.
All right, we're back. We're talking about the boil. And one question that came in, I guess, already was, what is a rolling boil? When we're talking rolling boil, we're talking about, a simmer is where just like little bubbles are rising to the surface.
Yeah, the surface looks really kind of flat, just slightly agitated from the little bubbles popping up, but flat.
Rolling boil is and a boil is where I guess you're getting, more surface action, larger bubbles or a greater volume of bubbles. And then a rolling boil is where you see actually, like little lumps in the surface, round lumps in the surface where you can see the wort turning over. And that's what you mean by a rolling boil. And then a violent boil would be, where stuff's leaping out and hitting you in the face. You can wort flying all over the place, and you can't control your firing of wort all over the place.
Yeah, if your boil's that heavy, you're probably going to get some scorching.
Yeah, and it just doesn't do a whole lot of good. Well, and let's we've got on the phone with us Jeremy Robb from Eagle Rock Brewery. Jeremy, you there?
Yeah, hey guys.
Hey, thanks for joining us.
Yeah,
hey, Jeremy.
No problem.
So, real quickly, give us a real quick breakdown of your background and Eagle Rock Brewery.
Well, started out like most small brewers out there as a home brewer. My dad and I have been brewing pretty seriously together for about 7 years now. And I guess like every home brewer, you just you get more into it. You start geeking out, getting the cooler equipment, and start doing all the research and background and understanding the process. And we got kicked out of the kitchen into the garage, and then eventually out of the garage into the place we have now.
So you've essentially turned a really good hobby into
work.
That's right. It's funny because I always joke that I used to be in the film industry, and I was always kind of complaining about the work-life balance and not having much of a life outside of work. But so now, I have absolutely
even worse
no life outside of work.
But you make some really good beer, though.
Oh, well, thank you.
All right. So, Jeremy, what are brewers looking for out of the boil? I mean, what's the whole purpose of boiling the wort?
Well, as most people know, the really main purposes are sterilizing the wort, killing off any of the, especially lactobacillus, which is on the grain after milling, and it survives through mashing. So to kill off that, any other bacteria that might be present, concentrating the wort, evaporating excess water, so concentrating your sugars and creating flavor and color, getting that melanoidin production, getting some color development into your wort, and also increasing your gravity. And then really one of the biggest things besides those is isomerizing your hops and solubilizing the hop components after they're isomerized and
getting the bitterness in.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah. So that was one of the big differences, from home brewing and using starting out on the kitchen stove and really having a anemic boil, not having the power to get a good rolling boil, and then going into our garage and having the turkey burners, those Cajun cookers that a lot of homebrewers have, and that's basically a direct fire method where the flames are hitting the bottom of the kettle and heating it up. But then the biggest difference for us in the boil going to the commercial-sized system, a 15-barrel system, is our kettle is steam-fired. And so, there's some differences there as far as with a direct flame, you're getting a lot more caramelization,
a lot more intensity, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big difference for us in moving up to a bigger size system.
And how did you? I mean, did you see or taste differences in the beer, from the homebrew scale to the commercial scale at first?
Yeah, we did. We sort of anticipated we were going to run into some unexpected results just from moving to the bigger system, and so we did a half batch for our very first batch. And what we noticed was we got a lot more bitterness than we even anticipated. Using brewing software and calculations to figure out the hopping rate for the bigger system, but even then, it was more bitter than we had anticipated. Yeah, so I guess part of that is probably the surface to volume ratio being less.
Much lower, yeah. Right.
And then also the kind of more intense heat, the more intense solubilization of the hops components. So, but yeah, that was a big difference, and it took a little bit of adjustment, but we figured it out pretty quick, and we're able to use that half batch and blend it with another. We did a less bitter batch based on what we had learned, and then blended the two to get our target beer. So,
how deep is your boil when you're doing a full batch?
Do you mean like depth as far as from the surface to the bottom of the kettle?
Right.
It ranges from, if we really get a good efficient mash and we have a full kettle, it's about between 4 and 5 feet deep.
Okay. Yeah.
Or if we don't get such an efficient mash and our gravity isn't as high as we need, then we'll get a little bit low, 3 to 4 feet, I'd say.
I see. Okay.
Ranging anywhere from that.
Mm-hmm.
And what length boil are you doing there? One of the parts of the question that Scott had was, some breweries, they're doing 90 minutes, some breweries are doing 60 minutes, some breweries, what length boil are you using and why?
Mostly we're using a 60-minute boil, and the reason there is just because we don't want to unnecessarily use more energy than we have to, to keep the boil going. There are a couple beers that we do a longer boil with. We do a 90-minute boil. We just did our first specialty beer, which is an Imperial Amber Wit beer, and it's like a bigger version of a wit beer, but with a lot of Munich malt as the base malt instead of Pilsner malt. So, but the objective there was to do a longer boil to kind of get more kettle caramelization and increase that malt character. So,
okay, yeah, you get a lot more melanoidin development. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
Now, John, you've been fond of saying, "Well, okay, you don't technically get caramelization in the kettle. You get melanoidins," and I always say, "Well, they taste like caramel type of compounds."
That's true. The compounds are very similar, but you need temperatures in excess of 220 to get caramelization as opposed to melanoidin formation, and you need a much. Technically, you need
oxygen as well, don't you? Right.
Not so much oxygen, but you need a very high concentration of sugar, almost like really boiling malt extract would give you that level of that ratio of moisture to sugar necessary for true caramelization. But the melanoid formation.
Sorry, I have actually a related question though, because what about with some of the homebrews we had done in the past, we would put a little bit of wort into the bottom of the kettle
Mm-hmm.
and really boil that hard until it started to caramelize, or maybe not caramelize.
Yeah, I think you're probably getting it there, because
Right.
you've got a very high heat, for a small volume of liquid, and you can, and certainly at the edges of that, you can achieve these 220 type temperatures over the 212 the boil.
Well, especially if you get it down to a syrup. I know if you take the first runnings, a wee heavy, you take the first runnings and you boil that down. When it gets to a syrup, the thing about I believe the thicker a liquid is, the higher the viscosity, the more heat it takes to
the
boil.
boiling point goes up. Yeah.
So your boiling point rises. So you do reach that 220.
Yeah.
And then there's plenty of oxygen, and the sugars are concentrated, and so you're truly getting caramelization at that point, right? Just not when you have a full kettle. Then you get some of those flavors, but
is by melanoidin formation instead.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But the hydrostatic pressure, when you get to 5 foot depth, that also increases the boiling point of the liquid by a couple degrees.
Mm-hmm.
And so that can change your melanoidins, and it can improve your isomerization, because the rate of isomerization does increase linearly with temperature.
Right.
But you're only going to get a couple degrees. You're not going to get
Now, all right. So one of the things that you develop over a longer boil is more color, more melanoidin formation. I think Chris Colby at BYO, he did an experiment where he boiled like an all Pilsner malt wort. Boiled, some of it for 60 minutes, some of it for 90 minutes, whatever, and went out to like 3 hours and compared the colors, and really didn't have a whole lot of color development. Now, I think that that's absolutely true. So you don't get a whole lot, but it also depends on the wort, right? The different components you might have in a wort, and that may have an effect as well. Is that true or no?
I would think so.
Yeah. I mean, that is true. The different wort compositions will encourage different reactions.
And
so
it even depends on the proteins present, right?
Right. You'll get different melanoidins, different flavors from Munich malt, such as Jeremy was saying with the Imperial Amber Wit, versus a pale malt, because they're a little different protein, a little different. What's the word I want to? The combination of proteins. As those form melanoidins with the sugars, you're going to have different sugars in a darker colored malt, and those will combine with the higher melanoidins and produce different characteristic flavors. So it's the characteristic flavors that we get from different malts are in great part a result of the melanoidins those malts form in the boil.
Mm-hmm.
So it's it varies with the color, and it varies with the amount of heat you put in, the intensity of the boil, the length of the boil, the gravity of the boil. All those combine to drive the different melanoid formations.
Mm-hmm. And so perhaps if you did a protein rest, you'd get a different set of melanoidin characteristics, probably generally the same, but maybe slightly different, or maybe more rapid or less rapid formation of melanoids. I mean, I'm not sure if that's melanoids are long proteins, short proteins, or what.
Well, I think what it drives is that when you are trying to clone a beer, a commercial beer, kind of look online or call the brewer, or try to get some feel for how they're conducting the making of that beer. Are they using a long boil? Are they using a low gravity wort and boiling it for a long time to a high gravity? Are they doing a fairly high gravity wort with a short boil to get to their OG? If the more that you mimic the way that boil is conducted, the closer you will get to achieving the same flavor, because those melanoidin paths are very technique dependent.
Okay. Well, let's do this. Let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll get more into how the boil affects your wort. Back after this.
Keep your carboy cap on. This is Brew Strong. We'll be right back.
Do you support the Brewing Network? Do you brew your own? Are you looking for an economical, fun, and legal way to do both? Subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine and do just that. All year long, Brew Your Own will surprise you, entertain you, and educate you with articles on beer and brewing from authors like the Brewing Network's very own Jamel Zalashat and John Palmer. Each issue is a full pint of brewing techniques, homebrew stories, tips and photos, projects to make yourself, and recipes for the avid home brewer. Get your tough questions answered by Mr. Wizard and polish your style accuracy with Jamel. A portion of every subscription goes to the Brewing Network, so subscribe today at byo.com/Brewing Network, or just click the BYO logo on the Brewing Network homepage and support a fantastic hobby and your favorite broadcaster. Brew Your Own, the how-to homebrew beer magazine.
Hey, what are you doing, man?
Writing a review of WLP 400.
What? You're reviewing yeast?
Yeah. White Labs has home brewer reviews of all their strains. Are you new to these interwebs? Check it out.
That's awesome.
White Labs, your source for great yeast, invites all brewers to visit whitelabs.com to read and write your own reviews of all their yeast strains. Get real-world tips and tricks from other brewers who have made the most of their vials and post your own experiences. It's another way White Labs brings you closer to the best yeast on the planet.
And send. There you go.
You misspelled flocculate, dude.
What? Mother...
White Labs. It's all in the vial.
Hi, this is Push from the Brewing Network, and I want to tell you about the Brewmaster's Warehouse and how you can get 10% off your next order. I'm a pretty techie guy, but I've never seen an online store like this. It's awesome. Go to brewmasterswarehouse.com and click on Brew Builder. You can whip up a custom recipe so easily even Sven could do it. Seriously, it's slick. You can share your recipe with your own logo and notes to the Brewmaster's database if you want. And the best part, it keeps a running tally of the beer you're building while you're doing it. Then, bam, click Buy Recipe, and your cart is filled and ready to go with helpful suggestions in case you forgot something. This thing is amazing. Brewmaster's Warehouse is run the way a home brewer would do it, with great service, fast turnaround, and $6.99 flat rate shipping. Brewmaster's Warehouse and the Brew Builder blew me away. Check it out today at brewmasterswarehouse.com. I'm serious. And don't forget to put BNARMY in the discount code box for 10% off your order. Check out brewmasterswarehouse.com. Cheers.
BN Army members, are you looking for a discount on hops? Keep listening. Nico's Homebrew Supply at nicobrew.com has hops by the ounce and by the pound. Choose from varieties like Amarillo, Centennial, East Kent Goldings, Hallertauer, Simcoe, Summit, Tomahawk, Warrior, Willamette, and more. And adding new varieties all the time, many for less than $20 a pound. Whether a couple ounces at a time or an 11-pound bag, all hops are shipped vacuum sealed and frozen straight to you. Nico's Homebrew Supply offers store-wide $5 flat rate shipping and won't waste your money on unnecessary overhead or advertising. They're going bare bones and passing the savings on to you. The staff at Nico's Homebrew Supply loves to brew and is committed to keeping homebrewing affordable and accessible to anyone who wants to join in this great hobby. And for a limited time, use coupon code BNARMY at checkout for a Brewing Network discount. Visit nicobrew.com. That's N-I-K-O brew.com for your hops and more. nicobrew.com, your bare bones buddy in the brewing business.
Hey, Push, the new brewery's looking good.
Thanks, Finn. Piece by piece.
Well, let's fire her up. Whoa! Is that a new kettle?
Yeah, just got it brand new, but paid half price.
What? And that blade scale?
40% off.
The new tap handle?
$5 instead of $13. Got a new regulator for the brew stand, too, but $5 instead of $25.
Dude, where are you stealing all this stuff from?
Where else? The More Beer deal of the day.
Announcing the Beer, and More Beer deal of the day. Every day, a new fantastic deal from big items to small that will blow you away. Boil kettles, carboy carriers, sterile siphon starters, digital timers. Watch morebeer.com every day for a new deal, and you just might find the item you've been waiting for at a price you cannot believe. Hurry, because stock is limited on most items.
And that sweet Guinness cap, let me guess.
The More Beer deal of the day.
Yeah, I knew it. Come on, let's brew something. Find the More Beer deal of the day at morebeer.com. Celebrity voices impersonated.
You're listening to the Brewing Network.
Learning to brew has never been so disgusting. This is Brew Strong.
All right, we're back. We're talking about the boil. We got Jeremy Raub on the line with us from the Eagle Rock Brewery in California, and so I want to get back to what happens during the boil, and obviously one of the things that happens that's important is the enzyme activity ceases. So you've got all these enzymes in there that have when you rinse out your mash, those enzymes end up in the kettle, and if you didn't actually boil, they'd continue to work to whatever extent they could. So by boiling, you stop those enzymes from working, and then also there's a lot of proteins in the wort that come from the grain as well, and those are coagulated by the boiling action. They're denatured and get all clumpy and stuck together, and then Palmer's got he's producing gas for his burner.
No, I was just enjoying a tasty beer.
Okay, and then one of the things about that protein coagulation, hot break and also cold break, right? So one of the things that's happening, the proteins are clumping together with the tannins, and you get these clumps, these flocks of break material. Now, what determines? People will say, "Oh, okay, yeah, I use this Pilsner malt, and I see it looks like egg drop soup. I use domestic 2-row, and I don't see hardly any, or whatever the grains might be. A lot of it's dependent on, I guess, the amount of proteins in the malt, whether you do a protein rest, and what else? Would it be something like pH that affects the break material that you see?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, one of the important things that happens in the boil is the pH lowers. So, they talk about the ideal pH for a mash being around 5.6, maybe as high as 5.8, but that's kind of the ideal. You always hear 5.6 being the ideal number for a mash pH. Well, then in the boil, there's actually some processes that reduce the pH. One of which is like calcium starts to precipitate out.
Bringing some phosphates with it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it brings the pH down to like in the range of like 5.2 to 5.4. Mm-hmm. And the lower pH helps those proteins start to combine with the tannin compounds that are present in there from the husks, and also from the tannins from the hop components. Mm-hmm. And they all kind of collide and combine.
It kind of brings up a question some listeners may have, is like, why do we want the proteins to coagulate?
It's actually, it helps kind of stabilize and get rid of those unstable ones.
Haze formers and so on.
Haze formers, exactly. It actually helps give you more flavor stability in your finished beer to have those proteins out. like John was mentioning, haze formers.
They can participate in redox reactions, participate in staling reactions by donating, oxygen, and not necessarily oxygen itself, but participate in an oxidizing reaction in the beer.
Mm-hmm.
Right. A lot of people might just disregard haze as well. I don't care so much about what my beer looks like. I just want it to taste good. But that's actually a big factor. Is like John is saying, that the haze can do more than just make a beer look cloudy.
So some of it depends on calcium present to precipitate out, form a calcium phosphate, and precipitate out during the boil. So if you're low on calcium in the kettle, that could have a problem there. I guess that's one of the benefits of adding something like gypsum. It it makes more calcium available as part of that reaction.
Right. And that kind of feeds back to our water show, Jamil, where we talk about minimum levels of calcium to help clarification of the wort.
Mm-hmm. Well, and somebody asked me recently about calcium in the mash. If you add calcium in the mash, or there's calcium in your water, how much of it gets bound up in the mash? I mean, is the calcium becoming chelated in the mash and staying there, dropping out, or does the majority of calcium make it over into the boil kettle, or any sort of idea as to how much is lost if that's the case?
That's a good question. Is from what I've read, I think a lot of brewing scientists kind of look at the wort boil, or the mash and the boil, as kind of a black box, where they're saying, okay, we know that there's this much calcium going in the water that we're using. Maybe we're making calcium additions, trying to get the minimum ppm of calcium up to like 50 ppm or 100. And we know we get good beer out the back end. So a couple times people have sent me data that they've done when analyzing their beer, and the calcium level has dropped, but I haven't seen a consistent change in that calcium number. So I think it depends. It depends on the type of beer you're brewing, the yeast, the vigor of fermentation. I think a lot of factors feed into exactly how much calcium gets bound up and used for various reactions during the boil, the mash, the boil, and fermentation. But at least brewers have established over the years that 50 to 150 going in makes for good beer.
Well, and the question always comes up. Well, how are the brewers of Pilsen, making their pilsners if their water doesn't have anything in it? And the interesting thing that I found, Tony from Fish Brewing, he got a water sample there from Pilsner or Quell, and had it analyzed, and sure enough, it's got over 50 or about 50 parts per million. Available calcium. So it was like, okay,
and a lot of calcium comes from the malt too.
Right. Yeah. There's
malt contributes. I mean, if you tailor your malting practice, and hundreds of years ago, each brewery had their own malting house. You didn't have commercial maltsters that brought truckloads. Everybody had their own, and so they would tailor their malt and their brewing process to get that calcium, out of the malt, and long boil to aid clarification, long fermentation to aid clarification, to kind of make up for the potential lack of calcium that directly aids clarification. So there's a whole balance there going on to those local conditions that drove that style of beer.
Very interesting. All right, so what haven't we covered on the boil? The volatilization of various aromatic compounds. talk to me a little bit about that. So we've got sulfur compounds, we've got other hop oils and things like that they get boiled off. Are there other things that are getting volatilized? Is there phenols or anything like that also come off?
I don't think phenols so much. Not that I'm aware of, anyways. But definitely the biggest one that everybody talks about is DMS and those sulfur compounds and the kind of precursors to DMS.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of those big unwanted ones. So some of the hop components might not be unwanted. I mean, that's the whole idea with adding hops right at the end of the boil to control your level of flavors and aromas. I'm not aware of any phenol activity in the boil. I don't know, maybe John or you?
I don't believe there is.
Anything from the malt, from the husks?
Yeah, you get polyphenols coming from the husks, tannins. And so a lot of those will be bound up with the hop break.
Mm-hmm.
The aromatic phenols that we kind of associate with beers, with finished beers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, at least as far as I know, and I could be wrong, I don't think those are driven by the boil in any way.
Mm-hmm.
I could be missing the forest for the trees, where maybe whatever small phenols we get are dependent on the hop break action and during the boil. Whatever's left over, the amount of phenols or the phenol profile that we get in a finished beer depends on the amount of hop break generated. That could very well be.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any information in front of me, but
interesting idea, though.
Yeah, most of it, as Jeremy says, is the sulfur,
mm-hmm.
Getting those aromatics out,
right.
That can lead to off flavors in the beer.
Okay, yeah,
and as we've discussed in the past, I think, Jamil, a lot of that's dependent on which malts you're using.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to ask Jeremy, what base malts do you usually brew with, and is that driving the length of your boil that you use?
As far as it relates to like DMS and that sort of thing,
right.
Not really. We are pretty confident, just based on all the home brewing that we've done, just that a 60-minute boil is enough to drive off DMS in the lighter beers that we do. I guess there could be some problems. There's always, seems like on a brew day, you're always bound to run into a problem or two, and sometimes, you may end up with wort in your kettle after the boil longer than you anticipated, and then you
get some additional DMS formation there.
Yeah, exactly. So,
do you use mostly Pils malt, or are you using domestic 2-row, or?
We're using like for our wit beer, we're using Pils malt, and we kind of do a blend of between like Castle malt, the Belgian Pilsner, and Weyermann Pilsner malt. Kind of depends on availability, but we're trying to stick to those two malts right now for consistency. But both of those, they are the lightest of the malts widely available, and so there's, I guess, to answer your question, there's not, it doesn't affect so much our decision for boil time when we're thinking about the malts that we're using. we're more thinking about developing a malty profile, or getting, relating more to the melanoidin production than to DMS volatilization.
Yeah. So the reason why the malt matters so much for the listeners is that the lower kiln the malt is, the less the heat that was applied during the kilning of the malt, the less the DMS precursor, the SMM, was converted to DMS and driven off during the kilning process. So there's more left in the malt when you go and brew with that. It ends up in your kettle. And so the lighter that base grain you're using, the more of that precursor you have in your kettle. As you boil, that SMM gets converted to DMS, DMS gets volatilized, gets blown out, and over a period of time, you end up essentially driving off all the precursor and the DMS, and your beer has no DMS. Yeah. So that's why you go with a longer boil. It's said that, I guess, about at 100 minutes, no matter what the malt, you should, end up with no DMS in your beer. That's why, if you go using a Brewing Classic Styles, we always recommend, if you're using a lot of Pilsner malt, to go to a 90-minute boil. If you're not, you can go with a 60-minute boil. And I'm sure it depends also a lot on
the vigor of the boil,
the design of the equipment. A lot of people, a lot of homebrewers, they have trouble getting a boil. They'll cover their pot. The problem with that is the steam rises, it collects on the kettle lid, it drops back down into the boil, and you end up not blowing off all that DMS. So that's a problem with a covered boil.
That's one of the interesting things with our big boil kettle is, it's essentially always covered because it has a dome on the top with a vent stack that goes up and out. So it's always venting to the outside, although the dome kind of acts as a cover for the kettle. So it's really important for us to get a really vigorous boil to drive it up and out of the vent stack. But what's really kind of cool is, if you have seen our kettle, there's a small pipe coming out of the side just at the bottom of the stack, and it's a drain essentially. So
for all that volatilized goo,
for the condensate, huh?
Yeah. So if a homebrewer is covering their boil to try and increase it, and you were saying how that is going to condense on the lid and then kind of drip back in. Or it just won't get volatilized out at all, and so that little drain on our stack is kind of cool, because all of the condensation in the vent drips back down, but there's a little lip that catches it and directs it out, so it doesn't drip back down into the beer.
Right. And what I've heard, I've never sampled that, but I've heard it's quite nasty.
Oh yeah,
it's full of DMS and other things. All right. Well, we're going to need to take another short break, but let me first. I want one more thing about the boil. Cold break. All right. So hot break by the boil vigor, by the temperature being over a certain point, and pH. Now, cold break, that's formed essentially the same way. It's insoluble at colder temperature. So when you chill it down, you're getting that break material. And again, it's the same sort of precipitation of proteins and tannins and other things, right? Now, cold break, that isn't is that dependent on the boil in any way? Is it necessary to get good hot break in order to get cold break? Do we know if there's a connection there or not?
Maybe John has more insight into the technical side of it, but I know that when from just experience doing really vigorous boils, and then it seems like there's more cold break. So I think there's definitely a relation there. There's setting up the reactions that cause the hot break to occur. I think it's setting up some similar compounds that are just insoluble at the colder temperature, so they're set up in the boil and then drop out when the temperature drops. But again, I don't know, John, maybe you have some more technical insight to that.
Well, no, unfortunately, not really. But from what I do understand, the vigor of the boil can, is going to promote certain reactions and denaturization, set up precursors for the cold break. So, as you're saying, with a more vigorous boil, you're seeing a better cold break. I think what's happening is that you're setting up more precursors that on cooling are more readily able to coagulate. Cold break tends to be a very fine flock, as opposed to the hot break, which looks like egg drop soup. I mean, very large clumps. Cold break tends to be very fine, and I think the cold. I think the degree of cold break or the amount of it has some dependence on the temperature rate. But also it's dependent on the final temperature. So it's slightly rate dependent, but more dependent on what temperature you finally get it down to. If you're only cooling your wort down to 80 degrees, before you pitch the yeast and start fermenting, you're going to have more of those proteins in solution for the fermentation as that slowly cools down to your fermentation temperature than if you were able to cool that beer down to 60 before fermenting. And you'd see a cleaner tasting beer and a clearer beer by cooling more before fermentation.
Right. Yeah, you actually have to get it down to about freezing and filter it to actually get out all the cold.
Get it all out, yeah, right.
All right. So, Jeremy, can you stick with us through the break and answer some questions from the chat?
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So we'll take a short break. When we come back, your questions answered live.
Brew smart.
Brew strong.
This is Brew Strong.
From the stovetop to a camp burner to some kind of brew stand, most homebrewers follow some version of this progression. With each move, a homebrewer will often have to change a lot, if not all, of their equipment. Until now, Blickman Engineering brings you the top-tier brewing stand, the only brewing stand that grows with you. For example, buy a top-tier floor-standing burner now, and it'll bolt right to your top-tier brewing stand when you're ready for all-grain brewing. The top-tier brewing stand is perfect for 5-gallon to 20-gallon batch sizes. Its modular design is adjustable and accommodates everything from small footprint coolers up to 30-gallon pots. How does the top-tier brewing stand do it? At its core is a strong, heat-treated and anodized aluminum main post. On all 4 sides are built-in T-slots for the adjustable heavy-gauge stainless steel shelves and beefy burner tiers. The tiers accommodate any manufacturer's pots or coolers up to 21 inches in diameter. Best of all, not only does the top-tier brewing stand grow with your skills and equipment, but it easily knocks down for long-term storage or transport, too. The top-tier brewing stand from Blickman Engineering. Learn more at blickmanengineering.com and to find a local Blickman retailer. And start brewing from the top tier.
Nico, listen, our lawyers said that we had to do this for 1 hour, and after this, we don't have to talk to each other for 3 more months to the next meeting.
Kids, come on, let's get out of here.
I'm supposed to have more lines. I'm the professional. Hey, it's Sully.
And I'm Nico.
And we opened the 21st Amendment 10 years ago at 563 2nd Street in San Francisco, just 2 blocks from Giants Park, to make great beer and have a great time doing it.
That's right, because to us, the 21st Amendment is more than just the right to make beer. It's the right to experiment, to be innovative, and just do things differently. And so now, we're putting our craft beer in cans.
That's right, cans. You can find our world-famous Hell or High Watermelon Wheat Beer and Brew for Your Die IPA in the Northeast, Northwest, parts of the Midwest, and Alaska in cans and on draft. So next time you're at your local neighborhood pub or good beer store, be sure to ask for 21st Amendment in cans.
Because everyone likes it in the can.
Tasty crack cans.
Tasty crack can.
Williams Brewing is your online resource for prompt delivery of quality home brewing supplies. Since 1979, Williams Brewing has offered the finest equipment and freshest ingredients and the best customer service in the business. Cut hours off your brewing sessions by using one of our 11 varieties of famous Williams malt extract. Our Williams Belgian Pale Extract is mashed with pure Belgian two-row malt and a small percentage of Belgian wheat malt for an authentic Belgian character you just can't get from other extracts. Or check out our unique fermenters, 2.5-gallon kegs, paintball tank-based draft beer equipment, bottling aids, and much more. We even have our own line of precision hydrometers. Go to WilliamsBrewing.com to browse our vast selection. That's WilliamsBrewing.com. Orders placed by 3:30 p.m. Pacific Time ship the same day. Brewing is easy. The Williams way.
There's an app on the iPhone for just about everything, including beer. Apps for finding a pint of beer. Apps that look like you're drinking a pint of beer. And now, there's an app for brewing a pint of beer. Introducing BrewPal, the most all-inclusive beer brewing app for professionals and hobbyists that fits in your pocket and goes wherever you do. Recipe formulation that can be imported and exported with a customizable database. Mash and sparge calculations, yeast pitching rates, carbonation tables, and more. Available right now for less coin than a pound of grain. See BrewPal in action at brewpal.info and download it for your iPhone at a special introductory price right now. BrewPal, all the brewing software you need, right in your pocket.
This is www.thebrewingnetwork.com.
Sit down next to it, grab yourself a paper towel, and watch those yeast have sex.
You're listening to the Brewing Network.
Back to your hosts, Jamil Zainasheff and John Palmer. Putting the testicles in technical. This is Brew Strong.
All right, we're back. You know what I realized? When we first came up with this topic, I'm thinking, oh, yeah, there's a good 45 minutes worth of material, and then, we'll just BS for the other 15 minutes. But, today I'm realizing, this is about a 4-hour topic, and we're trying to cram it into an hour, and here we're running close to an hour and a half. All right, so we got more stuff to get to, so let's quickly work through the questions in the chat room. What do we got, Justin?
Okay, just a couple of good questions for you. One that I thought was interesting, Funknet's in the chat room, and he wants to know, hey, when I turn off my burner, it does that poof and kind of shoots flames all over. I think all of our burners do that. What is that, and is it dangerous? That's his question.
It's, I guess it's backfill where you get the gas mixing with oxygen in the venturi in the burner. And it explodes and then, flames out.
So not dangerous?
Oh yeah, don't put your face next to it.
Don't insert any body part into the
orifice. Yes.
Orifices.
If you're doing that, then you might have some other issues other than burning yourself.
Are you familiar with our listeners?
Yeah. And our founder, for that matter. Okay, and here's a last question that came from the chat today. You guys actually covered a lot of things. So this listener wants to know, it's about his evaporation rate for his brew pot, which you guys weren't able to get into today. But he said, if I did an experiment with water, starting with, say, 2.5 gallons and boiling for an hour and checking the final volume, how different is that from boiling wort? So how accurate is his water experiment?
How does wort gravity affect evaporation rate? Or is boiling and steam comes off at the same, regardless of the viscosity of the fluid? I would imagine it affects it.
I would think so as well, but I think it's for homebrewing purposes. I think it's probably negligible. I mean, it would get him, I think, really close to the ballpark of what it is, and if he measures the pre-boil volume at, the same temperature as he measures the post-boil volume, and then figures out...
You may see the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the concentrations of sugars we're dealing with are not that great in the grand scheme of things. So probably only seeing a difference of 1 degree in the actual boiling temperature of the wort versus the water, and probably changes are very small between wort and water in this case.
Okay.
All right, and that's it from the chat room today, guys. We can wrap it up.
Oh, you have a question about electric brewing?
That's right. That did come in earlier. Yeah, the use of electric burners, elements in the bottom of your boil pot.
Right.
We wanted you to discuss the topic. Yeah,
water heater elements. I think they tend to be popular in abroad, outside the U.S., because people tend to have 220 volt access easily. In the U.S., it tends to be only in specialized rooms of your house, and with 220 you can get boil much faster, so that tends to make it more popular abroad, I think. You can do it, I think, if the heating elements are too dense calories per lineal inch of element, then you can get some scorching on the elements, I think. At least that's what I heard. I haven't done a whole lot of electric boiling, so wouldn't
I haven't either. I think they're probably more useful for heating up your hot liquor, the water that you use.
Then you can run them full bore and not a problem.
Yeah, because you can't scorch the water, but you would definitely start seeing changes in taste in the wort if it's getting too hot. But like you say, Jamil, I don't have enough experience with them to really comment.
Okay. Well, real quick, Jeremy, where can we find your beers?
Hopefully soon you'll be able to find it in bottles. We're just waiting for our glass to arrive, really, to start bottling. But right now we're on tap at about 11 or 12 local restaurants and bars, and there's a listing of them right now
in the Los Angeles area.
Yeah, in the Los Angeles area. Sorry. And on our website, there's a listing of the places that are pouring our beers right now.
What's your website?
www.eaglerockbrewery.com, and also we're pouring our beers in our tasting room too, which is attached to the brewery. So
great. I'm gonna have to make my way down there. I've heard good things about your beers.
Definitely come on down. Love to have you. All
right, I'll get down there. I'll taste some, and then magically someone will put in a Can You Brew It request, and we'll have you back on to help us clone some of your beers.
Yeah, he makes a good mild. Mild's a style you probably haven't had on Can You Brew It, have you, Jamil?
No, I don't think we have. That'd be a good one. I'm always looking for styles we haven't done on Can You Brew It, and mild is one of my favorites. So
excellent.
All right, I'm gonna have to get myself down there and taste it. Okay, well, thanks for joining us, and thanks also to our sponsors, Blickman Engineering. Those guys, they're helping keep this show going, and we really appreciate that. And John Blickman himself told me that he really got a lot of responses via email from you guys, and how excited he was to see that, and appreciative he was. So, go ahead, if you haven't already. Take the time to email Blickman at John Blickman at BlickmanEngineering.com, and tell him how much you appreciate that he's sponsoring the show. Also, if you can, go to Brew Your Own magazine and subscribe through either the Brewing Network homepage or at BYO. You can go to byo.com/Brewing Network and sign up there, and half the subscription price goes to the Brewing Network, which is quite generous, I think. And don't forget, if you get a chance, go to the Brewing Network store. Check out all the goodies there. All sorts of Brew Strong merchandise. You can wear Brew Strong hats, Brew Strong shirts. And someday we'll have, Brew Strong, I don't know, underwear or something.
Yeah.
I'd wear it. I don't know about you. All right. And until next time, brew strong.
Brew strong, everybody.